okay? You have to buy lunch yourself. This session is actually brought to you by Computer Society, which is I represent the Technopreneurship SIG. It is also brought to you by ACE and Stream Global. We run this every second Wednesday of the month, and today, I think because of the COVID, we will just have a conversation. We have done conversations before in the previous session. For example, we actually had Grace Chung. I don't know how many of you know Grace. Grace is actually used to be a 6 times technology reporter, and we got her in to actually talk to the startups about how to handle PR and how to handle newscasters and how to handle journalists, right? From the other side's perspective. So we had a conversation before on that topic. But today, we're going to talk a little bit about actually surviving through the turbulent times, and all of us are at home. And I'm really very fortunate, right, to have two individuals with me, and that is Vinod and Sharaf. Vinod is a entrepreneur, academic, adjunct professor, you know, and he teaches at NUS in the Institute of Engineering Leadership, right?
Yeah.
And basically, you know, we have been friends for the longest time, since I think we were teenagers, right? So we caught up again recently, and quite fascinated at what Vinod was doing. Sharaf has been in our committee for the Technopreneurship since the beginning. He is actually an SDS IT Leader Award winner, right? A couple of years back when he was a little bit younger.
and a lot more hair.
And a lot more hair. Yes, and I think Sharaf is also is an academic, is an entrepreneur, and an investor, right? Maybe what I'll do is that I will get them to introduce themselves now, because we are virtual, and the sequence of what do you call that? Photos may be different for everybody, so I'll control it a little bit. Maybe Vinod, we'll start with you. If you can give us an introduction to you and what you're doing, you know, and so on.
Sure. Thanks, Chuck, for having me. So I'm now currently a co-founder of a company called Crypto. So maybe I can do a shout out for Crypto at the beginning. So what we built this startup in 2011. Our focus is really to build trust among in the parties in the world, actually. So the idea is that, you know, it can be for any transaction, or even you're applying for university. How do you make people easily verify your document is authentic? And can I trust the information? You know, without me going to a notary public or even sending originals and stuff like that. So what we do is, you know, we work with the organization that introduce these documents. We take the information, we sign it with the private key and put it in a QR code, which is in a compressed format, compressed data format, which is our core technology piece. And then when the party receives it, even if you get an image, even if you get a photocopy, you can trust that it came from the original organization. So we've been, you know, doing this since 2011, but it's one of those hard problems that requires many ecosystems to play. But you know, we managed to get some success in the last few years. So prior to that, I actually started my career in a multinational. It's called Emerson Process now. It used to be called Fisher Rose now. And I'll explain a little bit more later. It's one of those things that when I joined the industry, it was really, oil price was really falling. It was as bad as today. It was like $18, $20 a barrel. Companies were struggling. But we managed to innovate and come up with a new product, which I was fortunate to work with. And then the internet boom came. So I joined .com in 1999, just before the crash. But we managed to raise money. So the crash happened, and the company is called Excellion now. It managed to survive, and it's actually doing quite well as well. So we'll share more of that, I'm sure, in the next few minutes as well.
Yeah. Vinod, I know you're also adjunct in NUS engineering. Right. Can you tell me a little bit about that? It's a very interesting program that you are doing.
Right. So in NUS, actually, so first of all, I have a PhD from NUS. It's a long story, but I graduated from NUS and I became an entrepreneur. So I was asked to come back to maybe teach a course. So the course I teach is called Enterprise Development. I actually work with companies who are looking to find new markets for their technology or for their core competency. And so it's a win-win situation, because I also have engineering students who I want to train to develop business skills. So now the teams form around these companies. It can be a small SME, it can be a large company. Last year, Singapore Safety Glass, PBA Robotics, or even Dyson, for example. Right? And now these teams work with the company and say, okay, how do I find new markets for your technology? So over a 13-week period, the students come up with a business plan, come up with new ideas and where they can look at opportunities and present to the company. So it's a kind of a win-win for both the company and for the students to develop.
Great. Thanks a lot, Vinod. Sharaf, would you like to just give a bit of background for yourself?
Okay, I lost the second part of your sentence, but I'm assuming it's about the background.
Yes,
yeah.
Yes, that's right. So sorry.
No, that's all right. So first, Chuck, thanks for having me over here. Winning that award with SCS was an important milestone in my career, frankly. And it gave me a lot of confidence to go forward as well. But to give a little bit of a personal and business background to myself, I came into Singapore in 1996 on a Singapore Airlines NOL scholarship. NOL is no more there as a company, but SIA, of course. I feel quite loyal to SIA as a result, still try to fly them, even though they are the most expensive airline on the earth. But with that, having brought me into Singapore and having seen some of the ways in which Singapore brings in talent, because I was a part of the IT 2000 plan largely. So I studied for 4 years in NTU. I really enjoyed the experience. Had jobs in the market with companies like HP, Agilent, and so on. But I chose to go down a research track from about 2000 to 2005, where I published heavily, almost 3,000 papers in 5 years. I would say that was a good rate, even compared to some of the professors back then. And as a result, I got my master's as well along the way. But I was largely enthused by the view that how come we don't commercialize enough from the local universities. And we used to receive in our research lab in NTU, people from Berkeley, from Georgia Tech, and so on. And that's what led me to the view that I should commercialize the technology from the university and make a consumer case largely. So interestingly, I took the technology which I had not worked on, but my colleagues in the research lab had worked on, also to be very impartial to the technology, and led to the commercialization of routing technology in the form of quantum inventions. So apart from working from NTU as a research engineer, I actually have never worked for any other company other than Quantum Inventions. And thereby I have to innovate a lot within to move the status quo as we move along. Now, Quantum Inventions grew first as a navigation company, which we still sell in the Southeast Asian markets. But since we were acquired by 2017, we have put a bit of a dampener on that side because of a global strategy. But we very soon got on to be known very well in the government circles to provide intelligent transportation services, which we then moved to fleet mobility as a service, where we serve logistics vehicles or freight vehicles, and also the passenger vehicles. So today, we are now a fully owned acquired company by Continental Corporation. However, we are still in a very different sort of operating environment because they have kept the legal entities separate. So we have a lot of operating freedom. At the same time, we do have certain benefits of being a part of a much larger family. And in this case, Continental is almost 44 billion euros in sale, or close to about 60 billion Sing dollars. So to be a part of that family, there's a lot to learn as well. So that's a bit of my personal and business journey to date.
So, Sharaf, interestingly, what is the area of study you were brought into?
Yeah, so I was very, very interested in programming back in the day. But when I landed here in Singapore, I realized everybody was far ahead of me. So I got a bit disappointed. So I decided in this turbulent ocean, there's no use of me trying to excel. Let me go down a different path. So the path I chose was actually integrated circuit design. So my area of specialization, if you may say so, from my computer engineering with honors in NTU, was more in hardware or integrated circuit design. And my research was also in the similar area, but with statistics and algorithms. So my specialty was in porting algorithms to architecture for integrated circuit design, something I have not touched ever since. Mm-hmm. In fact, I had a PhD admission to Georgia Tech, which also I gave up, but it's an interesting difference. In fact, one of the decisions we took when we started the company, because I had two other co-founders who were also technical, was that I will never touch technology again. Because if all of us are looking at technology, nobody's going to manage the other part of the company. So yeah, that was my background and what I came to finally.
That's really interesting. Maybe what I'll do is I'll start with you, Sharaf. In terms of the current situation with the circuit breaker, how are you guys doing? I mean, as an individual and as well as a company.
Yeah. So interestingly, I was on a business trip to Turkey um, uh, on from the 11th to 13th of March. That is when the borders started going up. Yeah. Turkey was the last country which apparently had announced. Well, this is a recorded conversation, so I should be careful. Well, they had announced no cases. Yeah. But as we all know, with countries that announced no cases, the cases came very fast and furious once they started announcing and testing. So because it was a matter of face, I just could not cancel. And I went, and I could feel the difference when I was traveling because airports were empty. Turkey has such a new large airport, completely empty. It was like walking a marathon from the plane to the exit and nobody on site, right? So that's when I started thinking, and I said, this is coming really fast and strong. And I was also worried at that point whether I will be able to get back to Singapore. But that's what seeded in my mind that I must think ahead on this crisis. So I even questioned on certain forums, thanks to the funds I've invested in, I had some forums I could attend globally. That is a government liquidity a problem? I did my own maths on the Singapore government liquidity. And I said that if they continue to fund in this way, maybe they have 24 months before they burn out. But that also became a question in my head. Even in the consideration that we are under Continental, so Continental being a 60 billion, currently a 20 billion market value company, liquidity you would like to imagine is not a problem. But I even instilled views that let's shore up liquidity in our own bank accounts for this crisis so that we can work independently. So with all these thoughts, we immediately acted and got the finance strength in place. Two, for us actually, our business is split into government, freight fleets and passenger fleets. So two parts of the businesses remain quite strong. So in fact, we had one of our best months ever in the month of April. But looking ahead, we do see some headwinds. So we are already beginning to make changes, something I can comment on further down this conversation today. So that's how we reacted, even though we were in a pretty good financial situation, but we wanted to put runways in place for a decent length of time, even though we are under a very large public company in terms of shareholding.
That's very, very interesting because SCS did a very quick poll, right, and asked who are affected by this COVID, and about probably 83, 85% of people say that they are affected, and you are one of the lucky 15%, that you get a record month out of all of this COVID situation. Perhaps, Vinod, if you could share something the same, how does the circuit breaker affect you and as well as your organization?
So, for us, we are very small. We're actually a very small startup. Maybe there are only there were six of us. So, fortunate by chance, one of my guys quit in the end of December. And I was a bit disappointed. I was looking for someone to hire, but then now I haven't hired, so that's good. so I'm okay with that. It's been tough because we've been through crises before, so we know we have to look ahead, make sure you have enough cash flow to survive, and we have to cut back on costs. So for example, I've given up my co-working space. Anyway, I haven't gone back for like 2-3 months anyway, so that's gone. And then we cut back some of our own the stuff that we used to pay ourselves as upper management. We just survive on expenses for now. And then so because you want to have a maximum runway, but then as in any crisis, there's also opportunities. Right. So in fact, my shout out to my friend Sanjay, because he just ran a course on resilience. So there's whenever a door closes, also a door opens. So interesting enough, we started to focus more on the blogs and web marketing, and our number of inquiries have increased a lot. So I've been on many late night calls, and one or two have closed. And now it's quite interesting. You talk about travel, right? So in early days, when you deal with countries abroad, they want to see you face to face. They want to come to you to see you. Now, because of the COVID, you can't travel, right? They're looking for opportunities they find on the web, and they're willing to close deals without even seeing you face to face. So, right now, hopefully, crossing my fingers, we may close a deal, even with a government entity based in another country altogether. Not going through any third parties, if all goes well, that's an amazing feather. So, my message to startups is that, it can open up many opportunities in this crisis like that.
You brought a very interesting point up, that really to survive this whole entire period, right? The products and services from a startup has to be somewhat, independent and being able to sustain itself in terms of implementation, right? I mean, self-service is actually very important. For the organizations that's very high touch or very like consulting and stuff, it's going to be a very tough time for them. But if they are on a more product and able to sort of implement and try online, right? And if you could have, Zoom sessions to hold their hands, is a lot easier, right? I would see. So I think there's some form of transformation. I think some of the startups might have to go through coming through from this period. Vinod, again, have you been speaking to any of the startups, your friends or people that you mentor? I know you mentor some startups, right? What do you see from them? I mean, what is their experiences?
So it's quite a mix. I mean, some are really hurting, especially some I knew in my co-working space. There were some who were in the more in the design or creative elements. So they have taken a big hit. Some have actually, they moved out even before us. So they've hurt. I know one startup that moved it was in the property segment, so they are also hurting. But on the other hand, some of the very young people are very gung-ho because, maybe they look at opportunities many years down the road. So they're willing to put in energy to develop things they feel that they can, quickly sell on the web or things like that. And I also talk to startups abroad, not just in Singapore. So sometimes I get startups approaching me for possible synergy. And it's interesting, like, the young, for example, in India are very gung-ho. Even despite the lockdown, they're always interested in figure out how we can work together, and also similarly, some in the Middle East as well. But some of the age group, the middle age group, like us, are a lot more conservative. So some have actually scaled back, so it's kind of a mix out there. But I'll say, for me, it's about half. Half are really struggling, half are still looking ahead opportunities-wise. Yeah.
Saurabh, I know you invest in startups and you also mentor some entrepreneur. What is your feel? What are their experiences?
So I would say that some which have the need for contact-based delivery, they are very, very badly hurt, because even if they win contracts, they cannot deliver contracts, and back-to-back usually end up not winning contracts in this scenario. The ones which are software-based and can deliver entirely on the basis of software, like Vinod expressed just now, they could still have their opportunities provided their customers are in business, so the demand is there, and the customers need the service. Not want, but need the service. Because everybody goes into somewhat conservation mode in this particular time period. So the need is very important to establish, and then if you can deliver, it's actually a opportunities kind of viewpoint today. But I am today in my role in Quantum Inventions looking at succession very strongly. So I'm very inward facing. So I could reflect on a couple of matters, not only with respect to this particular crisis, but crisis we have had of ourselves in funding, at the same time going back to the GFC in 2008, 2009. If you don't mind, maybe I can comment on that a little bit. Is that okay, Chuck?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So we've, of course, weathered through the GFC. We actually raised our pre-Series A capital in December 2008 with Leslie Lowe, more popularly attached to Red Dot Ventures, along with Spring Seeds, of course. So in a manner of speaking, for the right reasons, the startups will be able to raise money no matter what the situation, because no investor looks at only the current scenario. They expect you to get out of it. So if they can see with their money, you can get some multitudes or some multipliers, they will definitely feel their money is well utilized and they will get the returns as well. So that's point number one. Two is we ourselves have gone through financial crisis, not created by outside situations, but created on our own. We actually ended up acquiring one of our customers as a part of survival. and we went into a negative cash flow situation. So I'm not saying the situation is the same for us today, but for a lot of startups, it might be similar. One thing that is very important in this scenario is communication, communication, communication. Yeah, on both sides. One is you to be able to present the situation in a frank, fair, and realistic fashion. So in our case, in 2012, January, we know we were going to run aground in the middle of the year. So we actually announced that, look, guys, we are going to run aground. And we were only about 30 people back then. So conserve your money, save your money so that you can tide through the difficult months. And the time did come. We, of course, had some attrition in the process, but overall, because we had communicated, we didn't have major backlash. Interestingly, I won the IT Leader of the Year award the next year. So, but the times were very tough. So communicate, communicate, communicate whilst you are fair and realistic. And if you can present data-based inputs to the current set of engineers you have, which is largely the pool in most startups, they will understand and they will react rationally. Two is set up some ground rules. So in this particular environment today, even in our company, and we are spread across Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, and India. So we have the benefit of knowing different governmental regimes as well as different situations on the ground, including our teams are of different strength, different sizes in different countries. We set up two ground rules. One is health and safety first. Even if we have to lose business, we will do so. Yeah. And the second one being never being on the wrong side of law. So these two are our foundations with which we go to the next parts, which is who we sell to, what we do for business, how we deliver it. So these two are the grounding fundamentals, because frankly, because of these two rules, you could lose business. But if you lose business because of that, and you have eventually an impact in the system, whether it's pay cuts, whether it's leaves being offset, whether it is loss of jobs, they will understand that. And my final point is, one biggest opportunity which is very, very underrepresented in these scenarios is we usually take productivity for granted in many environments. This is an environment where it's an equal leveler for all our teams across every country, right? And this is an opportunity to look at a performance culture. That's something we've been doing as well. We've been asking for performance. And we've not been shy to say, even in the town hall we had yesterday, that we may not lay off because of the COVID situation, but we might still lay off for right-sizing our performance culture. So that is how hard-hitting the message should be. And as long as you're fair in the delivery, I believe you will have a lot of backing within the organization itself.
Well, that's a good advice. I mean, looking at what the situation is, you are actually advocating really to conserve cash, right? Because raising cash at this point in time is going to be very tough. Meaning that and conserving cash also means that like you said, maybe a pay cut, right? It could be extra effort to get more projects, right? To increase your cash and so forth. I mean, you have survived through several crises, right? Things like SARS, the 2008 financial crisis and the Asian crisis in the late 90s, and not forgetting, like you say, the dot-com boom, right? Okay, what were some of the techniques you guys use, right? And you can give the rest some advice,
Yeah, sure. Actually, on a personal note for me, it's been somehow I always been a roller coaster ride. So I find it very strange when it's very quiet. So it's one of those things that life is always like that for me. Since after maybe about 18 or 19, my father fell ill, and then everything started going up and down. So I actually closed the company, my father's company, the minute I became 23. So that's my first experience of understanding how to close companies and all that stuff. But in the case of Exilion, when we jumped ship, when I jumped and joined after I met my friend on a wedding dinner, I started Exilion, I joined. We actually raised good money. It was 99, it was really easy to raise money. And we spent a lot. And then the dot-com crash happened and we lost all our customers. So because our customers were, okay, so in Exilion, what we created was in today, like how Netflix works, you have a distributed content. Only the right person can get to that content. So you can imagine it was pre-Amazon, pre-everybody else, but very, very early. And we had customers, we had e-learning customers and so on. But they all died. And so what we did was, which I now teach in my class, is that we actually went back and say, okay, these are my, what are my core technology? What is my core USP, my core abilities that I can do? And now if I were to repackage, what applications we could possibly provide to the marketplace, and who would these customers be? So we literally go on the whiteboard and, list all these things out, and we say, okay, now how do we tackle this and try this out in the customer? Will this work or not? So after a few trial and errors, actually many trial and errors, we came across a use case which was where customers are willing to pay, is the fact that they have to send files across the world in a secure manner, and we will bill for that anyway. So we package it into a self-contained single. This was before VMware, so it's a single physical appliance that we literally had to go and ship to a customer and install it, and we install it remotely. So we will buy the HP locally, install the software, someone will bring it, ship it to the office, install it in the rack, and remotely we log in. Because we had to cut costs very low. So day one, we designed to be a totally remote service. And then, fortunately, happy, 9/11 was a very interesting period for us. When 9/11 happened, suddenly around the world, the airplanes all couldn't fly. And at that point of time, the main point of sending data was actually shipping CDs. And now CDs couldn't be shipped anymore because everything slowed down. And we started getting a lot of inquiries. How can I send data across the world quickly? So that was actually a sort of a blessing in disguise for us, So, we had many customers after that. So Epsilon then, it took off. So 2008 financial crisis wasn't so bad for us because, we already had customers on recurring revenue. We had changed our model. And, we now only sell licensed software because VMware was invented. So we will encourage people to use VMware. We just bought our software and bought our license. So, it was a nice thing for us that way. But of course, the side take on the story is that, we were actually a Singapore company. We raised money to became a US corporation because that's how we got the funding, based in Palo Alto. And today, Epsilon is treated like a multinational. So EDB treats it as a multinational. So it's a warp story, but it's after here in Singapore. Yeah. So that's my advice is, what I teach in the class is, you have to probably relook at your core strengths, core abilities, and find new applications and customers. But you need to have the runway, so conserve your cash to find these new markets for you. Yeah.
Any of you guys have any questions for our panelists? I've got a question from one of my friends. He's asking whether if there are any insights regarding the growth of like in healthcare delivery. There's something really very high touch. So what is your feel, right, on the growth of this high touch type of industry? What's your feel on that?
So are you talking about healthcare in the form of?
Yeah. Well, so basically, I think given that we are fairly technology driven, right? Okay, maybe health tech kind of organizations that requires high touch, right? And also traditional organization in the healthcare, can they actually digitize, right? To sort of get away from high touch. I mean, any sense on that from you guys?
So of course, in this particular scenario, I only have a brief view on this, but as you can see, the hospitals are majorly overloaded with the current COVID crisis. So to the point where in certain cases, maybe you might even get turned away if you just have a small symptom. So definitely, just from this crisis alone, telemedicine, telehealth, teleconsulting definitely picks up for sure. And if I'm not wrong, I've seen in passing data to that effect as well. But because this could be the new normal, and smart strategists in medical professionals could say that this is a way to manage that part of the system, you could then have leverage on the freight and the logistics and the last mile to deliver medication and so on as well. I've personally used the service once. I had a teleconsult and I had the medication delivered the same day in the evening, right? So this was a non-COVID situation. This was almost a year back. But obviously people confront these sorts of technologies or traditionally high-touch kind of businesses or this kind of services slightly differently. And of course, age, demographics, background will all matter. But the scenario actually gives people the catalyst to jump over the fence and go to the other side. And once they've gone to the other side, I believe there's no coming back. So not only in health, but in many other businesses, we might see some of that happen going forward. And the companies that make use of this opportunity will definitely have a runway to go forward to. Because in my opinion, COVID is just the beginning. I really don't believe we will have a vaccine in months. We will have complete resolution in months. We will have to live with this just like a common cold or a cough. Fatality rates will be higher maybe, but we will have to live with it. And come on, we all know what we have done to the planet. So more is coming probably in the decades to come. So the more we absorb these kind of technologies and maybe reduce our burden on the earth in a different way, these technologies will definitely prosper. But on the flip side, because of the situation, use of plastics has increased. I was aghast at the way a Dynamo washing liquid was packed so nicely inside cardboard and a lot of plastic and buffer by one of the online marketplaces. So a lot of other things are going to happen because of it, which might tilt us the other way. But in the case of health, I believe it will help propel or catalyze in a different direction.
Vinod, any views?
Yeah, I think Saurav has hit the nail on that. I mean, the technology will help, but of course, I don't think it will fully help because some industries are just by nature. I mean, for example, like barbers and hairdressers, all that. I don't think those will go away. Just that probably there'll be a lot more precautions, a lot more. Maybe technology can help. For example, they're doing right now the check-in and check-out and stuff like that, or self-declaration or health declaration. Because the whole idea is to help in contact tracing. So there'll be more requirements for that, more analysis. Maybe even AI skills, because then you want to let how people move around, be able to be able to narrow down where possible cases are happening, stuff like that. So there could be opportunities there. But yeah, I mean, in the high-touch industries, I think they'll be there for some time.
It's interesting because just to relate a story, my son was back from UK, right, during the height of the thing, and was asking him, why does it take so long for you to get out of the airport, right, and being in Singapore. But in addition to basically testing, swiping, and everything else, he told me that all the automatic gantries were closed, right? Because now you have to put your thumb, right? And we don't know how things was spread at that time. So when we first started off, right, we just do not know. So we had to adapt. And similarly, at our lift, right, in HDB, nobody there to touch the buttons, right? And until they have this plum putting in, right? So I think the team really is adaptation and adjustment, not just blind technology and digitization, I suppose. Maybe we'll try something new, right? A friend of mine actually has a question, and that's Vitik. So SCS, can you unmute Vitik and see if he could ask the question, if Vitik is around?
Hi, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Hey, Vitik.
Hi, Chuck. It's quite a simple question. Some of our clients are starting to delay start date of contract and so on, right? So I guess maybe there are some strategies that the panelists can share as to, is there a way to entice them to start work early? And I think it's a difficult time for everybody. So it's just a question of how do we, try to get work going despite, delaying contract and stuff, whether there are any interesting strategy they have in mind. Chuck.
Yeah. Any ideas, guys?
So first I would say, good you're signing contracts. That's a good sign anyway. Yeah. Now, this is where I believe you have to keep a very strong balance. Largely because if the customer has a reduced need of your service and doesn't really need it in this current circumstance and time period because of reduced business and so on, forcing the customer to start just because a contract is signed, of course, that has its remedies also in today's legal world because the pandemic has been announced and the government has also given a lot of support in that direction. But notwithstanding that, even if there was a legal way to enforce it, I believe you will generate bad faith. So if the reasons are real, there's no other way than to live with it, very, very frankly. And perhaps by showing an understanding viewpoint, you might even raise your goodwill with the customer in this case. But when the customer is being a truant and is creating problems for you knowingly, I think that is a case where you cut losses. But in this case, you're not really cutting losses, you're just deferring the gratification of the particular contract. But if it is something that is as important as guaranteeing your survival, then of course you have to do what you need to do. That's the way I would approach it. But I would say to a large extent, this is a situation where talking to customers, understanding them could lead to two ends. One is they are no longer your customers because they realize they don't need to be. Sometimes people pay for services, maybe not in your case, but in our case, that is true. Then they forget they pay for it sometimes. And then when you talk to them, they want to cancel it, which anyway leads to a better customer profiling anyway within your books. Or two, you generate so much goodwill that you can actually increase the business with them in the future. Again, the touch point is a useful touch point to be able to come out of it stronger as such. I think we should not be scared, even if our revenue levels are a bit more depressed, but are of a very good quality straight out of the crisis. But I would imagine that we should look at generating good faith and goodwill with the customer so that they again grow with you and hence grow you in the future as well. That's the way I would look at it. Empathy and then brass tacks to make the decision.
Yeah, agreed. I think you have the communication with the customer and sit down, have a frank discussion where they are today and what is their intent, and then you want to continue the conversation for years ahead. Keep the customers with you. They may come back later on, or sometimes if you find out what the real causes are and you understand where they are, you could then maybe restructure that deal to only address the need that they have right now. It could be much less, for example. Right? So you need to have that conversation with the customer.
That's good. I mean, guys, we really thank you so much. I think the time really passes very quickly. When we started the conversation, it's almost 1 o'clock now. Guys, thank you very much for joining us. I think out of this, I think what I get most out of this whole session for the startup is really a few points. Right? One is really to conserve cash because raising money right now is quite difficult. The other one is actually earnest communication. Right, communicate as much as possible. Right, to either your staff, to your investors and to your stakeholders in general, right? At this point in time. And thirdly, perhaps maybe looking at some internally getting internally prepared, right, for as an organization, perhaps more training, perhaps trimming of unnecessary fat, and so on. I think those are a few things I took away from talking to you guys in terms of what are the points that I think the startup should be looking at internally, right, to survive this tough time. Externally, I guess, is to look at perhaps maybe a new space, learning how to cope, maybe even morphing their products a little bit so that they could actually sell and without really doing extremely high touch, and perhaps looking at different industries to see whether the industry is moving. Like, for example, the price of Zoom has gone tremendously up, right, since the time is the COVID. And there might be area of perhaps cybersecurity, or different areas that could actually, having a little bit boom from the external point of view. Guys, thank you very much for joining us. I really appreciate you guys spending an hour with us. And perhaps we would like to, if you guys can, show some reaction to our speakers with a clap or whatever it would be, right, guys? Thank you so much, right, for actually joining us, right? I hope next month we'll do something. If you guys have any ideas what you guys listen to, please let me know. If not, guys, thank you so much. We'll catch up again sometime. Thank you,
Chuck. Thank you, Vinod. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Chuck. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.